When a guy reaches out after a period of no contact, a lot of women instantly assume it means he's had some grand realization, that he's been sitting around thinking deeply about what he lost and how much he misses you. But often, it's not that deep. It's not about love, regret, or a sudden clarity of your value. More often, it's just curiosity, a need to answer a question he doesn't even fully understand himself. He wants to know, where do I stand now? Not because he wants to start something new, but because he wants to feel like he still matters. Testing isn't necessarily about wanting to get back together. It's about checking whether the connection is still alive for you. When he reaches out, it's less of a romantic gesture and more of an emotional temperature check. He's not saying, I want you back. He's saying, do you still want me? There's a huge difference between those two statements. One is about building something, the other is about soothing ego. Many people confuse those signals because they come wrapped in attention, but attention is not intention. When someone disappears and reappears, it creates an emotional roller coaster. They were absent, you moved on, or tried to, and now they pop back up, interrupting your progress. That interruption is strategic. Whether he's aware of it or not, it's a way to make you pause, to make you question your next move, to pull your energy back toward him without offering clarity. You're left in limbo while he just wanted to scratch an itch of curiosity. Men test you after no contact to find out if they've been replaced. Think about that. It's not about your heart, it's about their place. He's not worried about how you feel. He's worried about whether someone else is getting what he used to get. That's a test. It's not a commitment. It's not a gesture of growth. It's an investigation. He's not saying, can I give you something better now? He's saying, am I still relevant in your world? You become more interesting when you become unavailable. That's what no contact does. It shifts the dynamic. You go from being someone he could access anytime to someone who has their own life now. And that's uncomfortable for someone who used to feel central in your story. When you go silent, you remove his ability to feel needed. And when he no longer feels needed, he becomes curious about whether he matters anymore. That curiosity drives the test. It's important to remember that the test is often subconscious. He might not even know he's doing it. He might reach out just to say hi or see how you're doing. But what he's really looking for is a feeling that he's still desired, that he could come back if he wanted to. But here's the kicker. He hasn't decided if he actually wants to. He just wants to know that the door is still open. That knowledge feeds his ego more than his heart. This is why it's so important to separate his actions from his intentions. A text is not a plan. A miss you is not a commitment. A call is not a changed man. When he tests you, he's not asking for a relationship. He's asking for reassurance. And many people confuse reassurance for romance. They hear what they want to hear, not what's actually being said. And what's often being said is nothing new, just old patterns in disguise. The most dangerous part about being tested is that it feels flattering. When someone who once made you feel disposable suddenly wants to check in, it can trigger old emotions. You think maybe he finally gets it. Maybe he finally sees what he lost. But testing doesn't come from clarity. It comes from doubt. He's not stepping toward you with a plan. He's stepping sideways with a question, and the way you respond will answer it for him, whether you mean to or not. When someone walks away from a relationship or just fades out, they often wonder if they've truly lost their hold on you. They don't say it out loud, and they may not even admit it to themselves, but it lingers in the background like a quiet itch. The emotional power they once had doesn't vanish the moment you stop talking. Especially if during that time you gave them access to your heart, your time, your energy. The question they carry isn't, do I love her? It's, does she still care about me? That's a different kind of question entirely. It's ego-driven, not heart-driven. And that's where the test begins. He sends a message or likes your story or randomly checks in, not because he has something to offer, but because he wants a reaction. Your reaction is the scoreboard. It's how he measures whether his presence still matters to you. If you respond quickly, he sees that the strings are still attached. If you ask questions or seem emotionally pulled in, he knows his name still holds weight in your world. That emotional pull you feel, that's the thing he's hoping to see. Not because he earned it recently, but because he used to have it, and he wants to know it hasn't faded. Think about this. If you had zero reaction to him reaching out, would he keep reaching out? Probably not. Because for many people, the goal isn't connection, it's validation. It's the rush of knowing they can still affect you, even without deserving to. He might not want to rebuild anything with you, but he definitely wants to know he still has the ability to disrupt you emotionally. That disruption gives him a sense of control, a sense of familiarity, a reminder that he still holds space in your mind, even if he walked away from yours. The emotional power game isn't always obvious. It can come wrapped in soft words, warm tones, or seemingly innocent check-ins. But what makes it a power play is timing. He waited long enough for you to start healing, and now he shows up. That's not coincidence. It's usually a response to your silence, your glow-up, or your absence from his radar. Suddenly, you're not chasing, not reaching, not reacting, and that shift unsettles him. So he reaches out, not because he's stepping up, but because he's trying to pull you back down into a dynamic that favored him. If he can get an emotional response, he wins. That response doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as subtle as sounding excited, replying too fast, or giving too much in your answer. That's all information to him. It tells him he still matters, still gets to have access, still has that emotional hold over you. And the dangerous part is, it can feel like connection from your side, but on his side, it's often just a game of reassurance. He's not looking to give something, he's checking if he still owns something. This emotional testing isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's insecurity disguised as curiosity. He might genuinely be unsure of where he stands and be fishing for signs that he's still significant. But the danger is in how little responsibility he's taking. He's not coming to you with vulnerability, asking hard questions, or owning the past. He's watching your energy, testing the current, looking for signs of life in a bond he hasn't watered in weeks or months. That's not love, that's emotional entitlement. And when he sees you respond the same way you would have months ago, it confirms something for him, that nothing's changed, that you're still emotionally available without him having to earn it. That realization gives him power, but it costs you clarity. Because now you're tangled in confusion, thinking maybe this means something more. Meanwhile, all he needed was a hit of emotional confirmation. That moment where your heart flinches and he sees it, even through a screen. You may not realize how much he's reading between your lines. Every emoji, every delay, every softness in your tone, it all tells him how much of your heart he still holds. That's what this test is about. He's not here to rebuild. He's here to measure, to scan for cracks in your armor, to see if the silence made you stronger or just more patient. And if he finds emotional access, he knows he still has power, even if he doesn't use it for anything good. When you go no contact, you're removing yourself from the emotional ecosystem he was used to. You're no longer available for comfort, praise, reaction, or reassurance. The space you leave behind isn't just silence, it's a vacuum. And vacuums have a way of pulling people in, not because they're ready to commit, but because they're uncomfortable with absence. That silence forces him to sit with something he didn't have to face before, the weight of losing your energy. That's not always about losing you as a person, it's often about losing the role you played in his life. And that unsettles people more than we like to admit. In the absence of your presence, he starts to imagine things. Who are you talking to now? Are you missing him? Are you even thinking about him anymore? These questions don't arise when you're still interacting or leaving the door cracked open. They only come up when there's a complete shift, when your energy is no longer available on demand. That's when curiosity becomes discomfort, and discomfort leads to action. But that action isn't always healthy. It's often driven by insecurity, not growth. He reaches out not to reconnect, but to relieve tension. The silence you've created becomes a mirror. It reflects back to him everything he ignored when things ended or faded. The absence of your voice, your warmth, your validation, it creates space for him to finally notice what you used to give. But instead of showing up with depth, he often shows up with a test, a low-effort message, a breadcrumb, something safe, vague, and easy. Because it's not about rebuilding trust, it's about reactivating your response. That's how he tries to fill the vacuum, not with substance, but with just enough pressure to break the silence. No contact exposes the imbalance in emotional effort. Before, you might have been the one reaching out, maintaining connection, initiating care. But once you stop, the roles flip. Suddenly, he's aware of how much space you used to fill. Not because he's ready to give more, but because your silence feels like a withdrawal. And people don't like withdrawals, even when they're the ones who triggered them. So he steps forward, not to meet you at your level, but to restore the comfort of knowing you're still there. That's not always affection, it's often anxiety. The power of no contact is that it breaks patterns. And broken patterns create confusion. If he was used to you chasing, now he's left with stillness. If he expected you to respond, now he gets crickets. That shift forces him to question his assumptions, and in that questioning, he often acts. But it's not always clarity that drives him, it's interruption. Your silence interrupts the story he was telling himself, that you'd always be there, always respond, always orbit. When you stop orbiting, the gravity of your absence pulls him in. In that vacuum, even small things feel louder. A missed call, a social media post, a mutual friend mentioning your name, all of it hits differently when he's not in contact with you. And that buildup creates pressure he didn't expect to feel. That pressure can look like regret, but more often it's just ego discomfort, because he never imagined you'd actually follow through with distance. He thought no contact was temporary, a bluff. And when it turns into consistency, it disrupts his sense of control. It's in this void that he becomes the one who starts to test. But not with depth, not with vulnerability, just with noise. A "Hey stranger" text. A like on a photo he ignored when you posted it weeks ago. A sudden interest in how you've been. It's not commitment, it's disruption, a way to stop the silence from being too loud. Because if you respond, the vacuum closes. And when the vacuum closes, he gets relief. Not because he's ready, but because he's no longer uncomfortable. What he's really doing is chasing emotional gravity. The gravity your presence used to provide. And when it's gone, he floats. He doesn't like floating because it means you're no longer the center of attention or the source of validation. That's why no contact doesn't just feel like space to him. It feels like losing control. And in trying to take that control back, he'll reach out, not with clarity, but with curiosity. Not because he knows what he wants, but because he's not sure how to feel without your energy holding him in place. When someone reaches out after disappearing, it's easy to believe their intentions have caught up with their actions. But often, what's really happening is that their ego has been triggered. They didn't suddenly develop a new level of emotional maturity. They just started feeling uncomfortable not being the center of your attention anymore. And the ego doesn't like being replaced, forgotten, or ignored. That discomfort doesn't come from a place of love. It comes from a bruised sense of importance. So when he pops up again, it's not necessarily about you, it's about him, about reclaiming a feeling, not rebuilding a relationship. The ego is reactive. It doesn't think long-term. It doesn't plan for growth or take accountability. It looks for immediate relief. And the fastest way to relieve ego pain is to reinsert yourself into someone's life. That's why he'll test the waters with a low-effort message or a vague, nostalgic text. He's not asking what you need or how you feel. He's checking to see if you'll still offer him attention without asking for anything back. Because the ego doesn't want a real connection. It wants reassurance that it still has access. His ego is louder than his intentions because his actions are impulsive. He might say he misses you, but what he really misses is being wanted. He might ask how you are, but not because he's ready to show up for you. He's just testing whether you'll still respond with warmth. It's not love talking. It's the voice of someone who's uncomfortable being irrelevant. And the moment you engage without boundaries, he feels that old power again. He feels chosen without having to earn it. That's the reward his ego is chasing, not your heart. You can tell the difference between ego and intention by watching what happens after the first message. Does he follow up? Does he ask meaningful questions? Does he make effort beyond the text bubble? Or does he retreat once he gets the attention he was craving? Because if it was about you, he'd stay consistent. But if it was about him, the moment he gets his fix, he disappears again. That inconsistency isn't confusion, it's ego satisfaction. and it leaves you feeling emptied, not because he took something, but because you gave him a response rooted in hope. When someone acts from ego, they want to be pursued without pursuing. They want access without responsibility, and they want affection without giving clarity. That's the emotional equation that works for them, but it doesn't work for you. Not if you're looking for something real. The louder his ego gets, the more he performs. He'll say what sounds good, he'll compliment, he'll flirt, but none of it is grounded in real effort. It's noise designed to stir up emotion, not commitment. Ego needs to be fed constantly. That's why it seeks validation more than connection. So when he realizes you're no longer chasing, texting, or checking in, that emotional food source gets cut off. And instead of owning the reason why things fell apart, he reaches out to test if you're still emotionally available. Not because he's ready to rebuild, but because he wants to know he's still desirable. It's not about fixing the past. It's about keeping his identity intact. That identity being, I can always get her back, her. It's frustrating because ego-based behavior can look romantic at first. A sudden message out of nowhere, an unexpected compliment, a hint of nostalgia, it feels like something real. But it's not consistent, and it doesn't come with real accountability. He's not here to take responsibility for how he treated you. He's here to feel powerful again. That power used to come from your reaction, from knowing you'd light up when he came around. Now that light has dimmed and his ego can't handle the darkness. So he'll test you, not because he's brave enough to face growth, but because he's afraid of being forgotten. The ego doesn't heal, it protects. It tells him to reach out just enough to feel significant again. It pushes him to remind you of his presence, even if he has no idea what to do with it. That's why you feel a tug when he messages you. Not because his intentions are strong, but because his ego is loud. And in that noise, it becomes easy to forget how quiet he was when you actually needed him. Sometimes when a guy tests you after no contact, it's because he's interested in keeping the perks of having you around without actually committing. He wants the warmth, the attention, the emotional connection on his terms, but none of the accountability or effort that real relationships require. It's like wanting to keep the lights on in a room but refusing to pay the electric bill. He's drawn to what you give freely, but the moment responsibility or deeper commitment comes into view, he pulls back. This isn't about love. It's about convenience disguised as interest. He might reach out with a casual text or a friendly message, and you might feel your heart start to hope again. But what he's really doing is testing whether he can still get emotional fuel from you without having to show up fully. He wants to keep you as an option, a backup plan, or an emotional safety net. This way, he doesn't have to deal with the hard work of being vulnerable or honest. He can dip in and out, taking what feels good without giving anything meaningful in return. This benefits without responsibility dynamic thrives on ambiguity. He'll send mixed signals, warm one day, distant the next, because it suits him to keep you close enough to care, but far enough to avoid real commitment. That push-pull energy keeps you emotionally engaged, even if it's exhausting. He's not interested in clarity or closure. He's interested in keeping the door open just enough to enjoy the perks. It's a way to have his cake and eat it too, without ever fully sharing the table. The dangerous part is that this kind of behavior can feel flattering. After all, someone reaching out, even inconsistently, can make you feel wanted and important. But what you're really being offered is a one-sided emotional relationship where your feelings and needs are secondary to his convenience. It's easy to get caught in this cycle because the attention feels like connection, even if it lacks depth. And when you respond with hope, it fuels his ability to take without giving. He avoids responsibility because responsibility requires showing up in ways that might be uncomfortable or inconvenient. It means being accountable for past mistakes, having difficult conversations, and being consistent over time. That's not what he wants. Instead, he tests to see if he can keep you engaged while avoiding those hard realities. The no-contact period made him realize that if he wants you back, he has to make some effort. But only enough effort to keep you interested, not enough to build something new. Sometimes he's not even fully aware he's doing this. He might think he's just checking in or being friendly, but underneath he's holding on to the benefits, the emotional connection, the safety, the familiarity. without wanting the pressure or responsibility that real love requires. It's easier to flirt with the idea of reconciliation than to actually do the work. And so he tests to see if you'll give him what he wants without asking for what you need. Recognizing this pattern is crucial because it helps you see the difference between being truly wanted and being used. If he's only interested in the benefits, you'll notice the inconsistency, the vague promises, and the lack of follow-through. You'll feel drained after interactions, not uplifted. That emotional exhaustion is your signal that he's not coming from a place of genuine intention, but from a desire to keep his options open. And that's not the kind of relationship you deserve. The moment you set boundaries and refuse to provide emotional labor without reciprocity, the test loses its power. Because he wants the easy access, the perks without the price tag. When you make it clear that you're no longer available on his terms, that you expect more than crumbs of attention, he'll either step up or step away. And in that decision lies your power. Not in waiting for him to figure it out, but in showing him you're not here to fill a gap or feed an ego. When he reaches out after a period of no contact, what you do next matters more than you realize. Your response isn't just about words, it's about energy, boundaries, and signals you send without even knowing. He's watching closely, feeling out if you're still emotionally available or if you've moved on. The way you reply sets the emotional temperature and tells him whether he still has influence over your heart and mind. This isn't just about him, it's about your power to control the narrative. If you answer right away with enthusiasm or dive deep into emotions, you're giving him exactly what he's testing for. A sign that he still holds sway over your feelings. That eagerness becomes fuel for his ego and can pull you back into old patterns. On the other hand, a calm, measured response shows you're steady and secure. You're not desperate for his attention, and you're not offering him an emotional free pass. Your tone says, "I'm here on my terms, not yours." Sometimes silence can be the loudest message. Not responding immediately, or choosing not to respond at all, creates space that forces him to reconsider what he's doing. It shakes up his expectations. If he was counting on a reaction, your delay or absence is a reset. It reminds him you're no longer waiting by the phone and that your time and energy are valuable. And that shift in dynamics is where real change begins, even if he doesn't realize it at first. But the truth is, you don't owe him a performance. You don't have to play into his test or give him a reaction that validates his emotional power. Your response is your choice, whether that's to stay neutral, curious, guarded, or to set firm boundaries. Each choice signals something different to him. It either invites him to continue or quietly closes the door. The power lies in your awareness of that fact and your ability to hold your ground with grace. If you respond with clarity and confidence, it shows growth and self-respect. It says you value yourself enough not to be a backup plan or a convenience. And that message is harder for him to ignore. It changes the game from guessing and testing to honest communication. You're no longer a prize to be won through tests. You become a person who knows what she deserves and won't settle for less. That shift challenges his assumptions and forces him to reconsider his own intentions. At the same time, your response can be a moment of empowerment for you. It's an opportunity to practice emotional boundaries and self-control. It's where you decide what kind of energy you want to invite back into your life, if any. You're not just responding to him, you're responding to yourself, reinforcing your values, your worth, and your limits. That's a form of self-love that shapes the entire dynamic going forward. Beware of automatic reactions, the quick, emotional replies that come from hope, loneliness, or old habits. Those responses often hand him the control without realizing it. Instead, pause and ask yourself what you really want to communicate. What message will protect your heart and honor your growth? What tone will keep you centered, calm, and in charge? When you take that moment, you reclaim your power and stop being pulled into his testing. Ultimately, your response sets the tone not only for how he interacts with you, but for how you feel about yourself in this situation. It shapes your emotional landscape and determines whether you stay stuck or move forward. The control you show in your response becomes a mirror of your self-respect. And that is one of the most powerful moves you can make in any relationship, especially when someone is testing the waters after no contact.